God of War Ragnarok is just the beginning for the series on PlayStation 5. We know that Cory said that Sony Santa Monica is working on a lot of different things, and this was just after the launch of Ragnarok. And since then we've had many teases for other projects in the franchise, although sure I can see them do a new IP as well, so I will touch on that, but mostly focus on the other God of War projects that seem to be coming. Now this means that the video will contain spoilers for Ragnarok, so come back later if you haven't finished the game yet. A like on the video would of course really help me out. Subscribe for more God of War content like this, and let's go. I think the most obvious project that we're getting is a standalone Atreus adventure. I really like the first moment early on in the game where the camera would suddenly follow Atreus, and I was like, are they really going to do it? And then I stopped for like a few seconds and I was like, okay, let's go. So Eric Williams, during various spoiler casts, noted that the idea was to have 25% of the game with Atreus and 75% with Kratos, which of course ended up being the case for the main story. I thought he played very well, although developers wanted a different melee weapon for Atreus at first.
And they kept asking, they're like, give him a sword, give him a club, give him I was like, dude, just have him hit him with the bow. I just want him to have the bow. They're like, nobody wants to hit anything with a bow. And I was like, we'll put magic on it, it'll be great. Some people still don't like it, I get it, you know, but I want to give him room to grow. And if you give him all this stuff out of the gate, and then again, it's like, well, where do you go from there?
And they still haven't explored that in Ragnarok, so that's something we can probably expect in a standalone title. I already love the twist on the companions with Ingrid, to still have a use for the square button to change things up. And it was awesome to fight alongside Angrboda, who of course used her awesome magical paint moves. And at the end of the game, we see Angrboda give Atreus her marble, and Eric Williams said the following about this during a GameSpot video.
They are together in that cause. Like, just because he goes up that way and she goes the other way, and you see her back in Jotunheim at the end, it's like they're doing it together. Yeah. Like, and they swapped the marbles. And the marbles are what help. They're almost like compasses that help find each other when they go through the Utgard. And it's like, you know, she already had his. That's why she keeps finding him. But she gave him her marble. You know, so they're gonna be a thing. If we ever get around to that in the future, we'll see.
DLC?
I have no idea what the future holds at the studio. That's above my pay grade, but...
I find that hard to believe. He must know, but I totally get that he doesn't want to confirm anything yet. And just before this moment, Atreus tells Kratos that there are other giants out there, that he has to find them. He already thinks he knows where to look, but it has to be done alone. Which is of course the perfect setup for a solo game, and there are still many other things that have not been resolved. One of those things is his relationship with Sindri, who is still angry at Atreus at the end of the game, although Eric Williams did hint in an IGN podcast that might change in the future.
I don't know, man. Some people have fallouts and don't talk to their brother for 20 years, or their best friend never again over some silly dumb shit. So, you know, we're like, you're not just gonna bounce back, you know. So see what the future holds, but right now they're not on good terms.
So I think that even if you did not like playing Atreus, they still want to give you reasons to check this potential game out, and continuing key moments from Ragnarok will of course help with that. Another big question is of course, who blew the horn in God of War 2018, with Eric Williams actually pointing in the direction of Cory for this during the Kinda Funny spoiler cast.
Who blew the horn?
Gotta ask the other guy.
God damn it.
And well, on Twitter, Cory said that we should keep the faith. One day I will be coherent enough to actually create the moment to answer this. And stick with me, but I think it's kind of similar to the Metal Devil that we now get to fight in the new Horizon Forbidden West DLC. It's something we always wanted in like a main game, but they saved it for the extra content, so more people will check that out. And the same can be applied for the who blew the horn question. If they answer that in a standalone Atreus title, more people who maybe would otherwise not have bought the game because Kratos is probably not playable will now check it out. It also seems that Jormungandr was sent back in time by Thor's hammer during Ragnarok, with Freya, Kratos and Mimir talking about this when exploring Midgard after the ending.
It's strange. There are still signs of the world serpent all over the lake. But we saw him disappear at Ragnarok.
That could only mean the legend was true all along. That blow from Thor sent Jormungandr straight back in time. A younger Jormi, fresh from Jotunheim, would grow into the serpent we know.
When we first met the snake, you said that he found Atreus familiar. Perhaps they met in Jotunheim.
Perhaps so, brother. We'll have to ask the lad for that story when we next see him.
Like, what if instead of a location, Atreus means that he wants to look for Jormungandr to see if he knows where more giants are? Like, it's overall weird that there still seem to be some story threads that need an answer, an ending in the Norse mythology, even though they said that Ragnarok is the final game in the Norse saga. Like, I think they meant mainline titles here, and that this potential Atreus adventure is more like a standalone big DLC, but of course bigger than that, I think comparable to Miles Morales, to tie some loose ends before we really go to the next mythology. And the next mythology seems to be different than we first expected, and we discussed that in our previous video that I will link to in the video description for if you haven't watched it yet. Now, another big thing, and this brings us to the second project I think they're working on, is that we only get to use Atreus' bear powers for one very brief moment during the final mission. Really awesome, did not expect it, but it makes way more sense to include this from a budget standpoint if you were going to use it in future content as well. Like that Atreus $40-50 standalone game like Miles Morales, but also in co-op. Yes, okay, while the Atreus game I think is very likely going to happen, this next project is more a theory I have, but stick with me because I got a ton of interesting points to back it up. First, let's start with Truth. We of course learn at the end of the game that she has something that she needs to find, which if we return to the blacksmith in Alfheim, see is Mjolnir. So she now has the weapon that we wanted Kratos to use in Ragnarok, but as Eric Williams already said also during Spoilercast, and we noted this in our previous video as well, it was the weapon we most expected, and the Leviathan Axe was also designed as a counter to Mjolnir, so maybe weird to have both of them. They would also play quite the same, while the spear is something completely new instead. Now, what I'm trying to say is that I don't think we should lose all hope yet. Like, I don't think Truth will get her own game, but she would be perfect as one of the playable characters in a co-op title. They already did a ton of combat animations for her, and really, when playing that Niflheim mission, for example, I already had a feeling that I was playing a multiplayer game with Truth controlled by a different player. We know that the Ragnarok post game teases where things are going next, and we also have multiple mentions of Truth after she retrieved Mjolnir. We got Skjolder in Midgard asking about her. We tell him that she has her father's hammer, and he says, don't you worry, she's gonna do good with that thing. Also, Lunda agrees when you decide to talk to her. She says she has a good feeling about the Truth girl, and Freya agrees and then says this.
She was apparently quite eager to learn from all the Valkyries. Now that she has Mjolnir, I expect her next stop will be to begin training with Sigrun.
I think Brock and Sindri would be happy knowing that hammer's finally with someone worthy to wield it. And a future Valkyrie, no less.
Like, it could totally be that she shows up as a Valkyrie in a future title, but we know Sony is very eager to release live service games, with more than 10 currently planned for before March 2026. We know that Horizon is getting the multiplayer treatment, with Guerrilla just confirming that a new internal team is developing a separate online project set in Horizon's universe. The Last of Us Factions multiplayer is of course getting spinned into its own standalone thing. Insomniac is hiring for a new multiplayer title, and Ghost of Tsushima of course already had their big co-op experiment with Ghost of Tsushima Legends, which I really think was like the kick-off of this initiative. So I have a really hard time believing that they won't do something similar with their biggest franchise, especially after the focus on companions, making them combat ready. Like, I think Angrboda would be an awesome playable character as well, and the fact that we already had a second playable character next to Kratos. And I think a lot of people would have loved to keep playing Ragnarok if there was more to do after getting the 100%. Like, gameplay is key in a live service game, and God of War got that already nailed down. Also, when playing the different Muspelheim challenges, I just could not help but think that the special objectives they introduced, like throwing the orb in the rift or killing regular enemies before fighting the elites, Things like that just would work very, very well in a co-op game. This would then also let them use all the environments, creatures and enemies that they designed for the Norse Saga, something that they will probably leave behind for the next real game that takes place in a different mythology. Again, just my speculation, curious to hear your take. As for Cory, I personally think he's probably doing something else, so not God of War related, while of course still sharing his knowledge and thoughts with the team inside Santa Monica who is working on the franchise. He noted on Twitter that his current thing has been in the works for many years already, probably with a smaller team, which is of course very interesting overall. He always said that he wanted to make a new IP after God of War 2018, something of his own. So it's probably not related to that cancelled Santa Monica project that we saw in the Raising Kratos documentary. I really think they're giving him all the trust so he can hopefully make the next big thing for Santa Monica, although even after Ragnarok I still think most developers at the studio will be busy with God of War content. Eric also noted in an LA Times article after Cory said that they were working on a lot of different things, that if the company dedicates itself full-time to the God of War franchise, that there's no shame in that. And we kind of see that happen with every big Sony first-party studio now, a focus on just one IP and then make a single-player experience, multiplayer, launch it on PC and have a movie and TV show as well. So maybe Santa Monica is only working on God of War, like that would fall in line with the other Sony studios, but again, I do think that Cory is probably figuring out his own thing, and when we hear more about the future of God of War and whatever Cory is doing, I'll of course let you know here. Of course, make sure you are subscribed if you haven't already, a like on the video would really help me out, and check out that video on the next mythology God of War will likely go to by clicking on the screen. We got a follow-up on that one planned as well, so stay tuned. For now, I will speak to you soon. Goodbye.